Hey everybody, Grumos here, and today I got another short Star Citizen video. Specifically, I want to show you the multiplayer part of the Arena Commander module of the game this time. Now, it has been some time since my last Star Citizen video. The reason is, after two videos that showed the PvE part, I did want to finally make a video showing the PvP part of the game, not another PvE video, as my channel is of course mostly about flying in a PvP environment. I did get access to multiplayer pretty quickly after my last video, however with the access also came a new patch, and as is occasionally the case with pre-alpha software, the patch had a few issues that prevented me from playing the multiplayer part. Thankfully, the newest patch has resolved all those issues and in general polished the dogfight module quite a bit, so I can finally show you some multiplayer dogfight action, and I think the multiplayer part is quite fun already, and it shows the graphics and especially the damage model off quite nicely, I think. So I thought I'd show you some gameplay and give you a few impressions of what I think so far. Keep in mind though that all of this is still considered pre-alpha software and subject to change, so you will most likely see an occasional glitch every now and then. Also, those are the first multiplayer matches that I have played in Star Citizen, so I am of course not that great at it yet. I still have to think about how to do the maneuvers I want to do a lot of the times, instead of the movements being automatic, but that will improve over time. Now, since it has been a while since my last Star Citizen video, I would like to give a short overview of the game. So, not to give a wrong impression of what the game will be about to people that haven't heard about the game yet and are new to my channel. Now, Star Citizen is a crowdfunded space game or space sim, and a game I'm pretty excited about because I was a big fan of the space sims of old, like Wing Commander, X-Wing or Free Space to just name a few. The game, in its finished form, will feature a large persistent universe with hundreds of star systems, with at least a partially player-driven economy system, and similar to a game like EVE Online, Freelancer or X for example, you will be able to do more than just fight. You can also play as a trader or an explorer, or build your own factory like in X. Also, the game will have a first-person shooter part, to for example attack and capture damaged capital ships. All of this however is still pretty far in the future, and those persistent universe parts of the game are not yet available for testing. Now, one special thing about the game's development is that the community gets to play and test the different parts of the game, the fighting in space, on the ground, or the customization of your hangar for example, in a pretty early stage, before the full persistent universe is available. The idea of this is that first of all to give the pledgers something to play around with earlier, and also to give the devs feedback from a large amount of testers in an early stage than usually would be the case in the development of a game. At the moment, the testing focuses on the basics of the dogfighting in space, so you will get to try fighter versus fighter combat, but larger multi-crew ships are not available yet to test. That will be the next big step when it comes to the dogfight module. In the end, the largest ships available for players to control are supposed to be carriers that can carry a lot of fighters and bombers, and require a number of people to run efficiently. At the moment, the fighting is going on in relatively small arenas, and that is what I mean by not giving a wrong impression of what the game will be about. While the arenas for the current dogfight testing are small, in the finished game you should have entire star systems to fly around in, and that will add a few elements to the game that are not apparent yet. For example, the radar and finding ships that do not want to be found will play a bigger role in the finished game, as well as managing your own emissions to not show up on the radar at longer ranges. And there will be ships set up for AWACS or stealth roles. Those things of course do not matter in the current testing phase, but they will be in the finished product. I just wanted to mention that at the beginning. The finished game should be a lot more complex than just cool close-range dogfights, though that alone is pretty fun already, I would say. Now let's take a look at the multiplayer fighting. I hope I can get you an impression of how it feels at the moment, and I would also like to share my opinion on what could be improved. As I have said, I am still new to multiplayer mode in Star Citizen. Those are my first matches. My plan when going into those fights was pretty simple. Something easy to start with. In a space game like Star Citizen, normal combat maneuvers that are aimed to get on your opponent's tail, like you would use in a flight sim like War Thunder or DCS, won't work well in space, because the ships can rotate on the spot and shoot targets behind them, and that leads to a completely different style of dogfighting. And this difference in how you can fight I really like. I already have flight sims like War Thunder and others for the real aircraft in atmosphere kind of fighting. I think it's nice that Star Citizen as a space game provides, with its different setting, also an entirely new way of dogfighting, instead of just using a very dumbed down World War II fighter style like older space games used to do. So my basic idea when going into Star Citizen multiplayer when an opponent is facing me was to use the decoupled mode, which allows you to strafe to the side, up and down and backwards and forwards, to circle the target while aiming at it, to keep my transverse velocity up and also strafe up and down at the same time to present a more difficult target. I have already made a video explaining this decoupled flight mode in more detail, so I am not going into much detail about this flight mode again. You can take a look at my previous Star Citizen video for more info about it, and what it lets you do and its limitations. Anyway, that was the basic idea going into my first multiplayer matches. A pretty simple and straightforward move to start off. It did not work quite as I had expected though. With the limited speed that decoupled mode allows you, I did not manage to actually circle the target that often. The opponent could usually prevent that. But it worked well enough to present a more difficult target and get a few kills. Now, even though I would call this a basic maneuver, to actually do it in decoupled mode requires a bit of work from the pilot. And let me say this right away, that is one of the things I really enjoy about the game. To give you an example, let's assume we have an opponent coming in from behind and we want to execute the said circle strafe movement. Those are the inputs required for a normal joystick and keyboard user like myself. We have to switch to decoupled mode and start turning around towards the opponent. At the same time hit spacebar to kill your momentum, W to start accelerating towards the opponent, D or A to start strafing sideways, and E and Q to strafe up or down to present a harder target, all while aiming at the target and firing. Now that I love. I am a big fan of it when you actually have things to do in a game while fighting and playing. Something to learn and get better at. I think it's really cool to watch that transition from the early games where you still have to think about how to do a move and what button to press to make this move happen, to a few days or even weeks later when you have more experience and you just think, that is what I want my ship to do, and your hands do the work basically on their own without thinking. Now, not everybody might share this opinion of course, and you don't have to use decoupled mode if you don't want. You can just ignore all of that, and the basic controls without decoupled are pretty simple. But if the player invests the effort to learn all the different control modes properly, he will be rewarded. That's why I really like the current flight mechanics with the different control modes, like decoupled. However, there are of course things that could be improved in my opinion. First of all, what I would like to see is some more speed in decoupled mode. Now, the speed in general is still subject to discussion at the moment, with some saying that the ships are in general a bit slow at the moment and should be faster. Now, I am okay with the basic speed of the ships as it currently is. I would not mind them being faster, but I feel it is also fine the way it is right now. There is a in-game lore explanation, by the way, why the speed of the ships are kept at a certain speed, but the reason is of course simply gameplay. After all, while Star Citizen certainly has or will have some simulator elements in its finished form, it is not meant to be DCS in space. Also, the ships will of course be customizable, and we don't know yet how much speed an engine upgrade will get you in the end, so maybe they will end up being a lot faster than they are right now. We don't know yet. But anyway, overall I'm fine with the basic top speed of the ships in a normal flight mode at the moment. But where I would like to see some more speed is in a decoupled mode. When switching from the normal to decoupled mode, you can fly in every direction, but you are limited to half your normal delta V. I have explained that in more detail in my last video. And I think this is too slow, and that is also a reason why my circle strafe move did not work as I had planned. I simply could not build up the speed to actually get around a target and start circling it. I would like to see the 50% top speed increased to at least 75% of the usual top speed when strafing sideways or forwards and backwards, and I wouldn't mind 100%. I also think the main thruster should work in decoupled mode as well, to get some more acceleration to the front. That would make maneuvers in decoupled mode a lot more potent, and I think in the long run this will be required, as pretty much all advanced maneuvers in Star Citizen will need the decoupled mode. Another thing I would like to see is the ability to roll in decoupled mode, which you currently can't do. In decoupled you can yaw and pitch as well as strafe in all directions, but you can't roll the fighter, and that prevents you from doing a number of basic maneuvers in this mode. One that comes to mind and I would love to do is a simple barrel roll. If someone is attacking you head on, you could go to decoupled mode and use the side strafe in combination with roll to do a barrel roll around his fire while keeping the crosshair on him to fire back. And that is just one example for the things you could do if you would be able to roll in decoupled mode. You can of course do a barrel roll in the normal flight mode without decoupled, but you could not keep the crosshair on the target all the time at the same time. I have heard on the forums that one reason for not having roll in decoupled might be that the ship's thrusters could not handle the extra control axis. I don't know if that is the case, but if it is true or not, I would like to see a solution for this and the implementation of roll in decoupled mode. If that means adding an extra thruster, I'm fine with that. But if the thrusters are really the problem, I guess you could in this case also come up with another solution to roll the craft, like a sci-fi version of a reaction wheel. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with the way the ships fly at the moment, though I hope control customization comes soon. There are a few issues with the way some of the controls are set up at the moment. For example, I have my flight controls set up the way you would have them traditionally in an aircraft. Stick for pitch and roll, and rudder for yaw. Some like it the other way around in space sims with the rudder controlling roll. I think that's a personal preference thing, and both ways are viable in a space game. However, the problem I have is that when I switch from the normal to decoupled mode, the roll axis suddenly becomes the yaw axis, which can be confusing mid-maneuver. But I assume problems like this will be resolved once we can properly customize the controls. Now, another thing that I would like to see and I hope will come soon is Drek-IR support. I really got used to having it, and I have to say in cockpit view without it I feel slightly claustrophobic. I don't know when Drek-IR support will be implemented, but it seems Oculus Rift has priority here, which I have to say is a decision I have trouble understanding. Drek-IR is a well-established product, available since 13 years, with tens of thousands of users already owning it. I think it should have the priority over the OR, but oh well. Drek-IR support is being worked on, even though it doesn't seem to have high priority at the moment. I can't wait to get it. I think it will really improve the dogfighting in the game. Well, other than those issues with the decoupled mode I have talked about, I am pretty happy with how the game looks at the moment. I will need to play a few more matches to be able to say much about weapon balancing and things like that, for example. I only used the basic weapon setup for my ships so far, but I think this is a little early for getting too deep into things like weapon balancing anyway. Well, that was a look and some preliminary thoughts on the multiplayer part of Arena Commander, and this is it for this video. I hope I can make some more maneuver guide videos about the game in the future. Till then, I hope it was informative, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.